Really glad to see you all here. Welcome to the session on XRM, Power of the Platform. So, before we get started, a quick introduction here. My name is Venkat Sathimurthy, and I'm a program manager, Microsoft. I work on the core Dynamics CRM platform, and along with me, I also have a core presenter today who would be sharing the stage in a little bit. Mike Carter, he's also a program manager on the platform as well. So it's going to be a very interesting session today, right? It's been 4 or 5 years. It's been 2000. Last it was 2008 or 9 is when we last used the term XRM, right? And it's been 4 years since we used it, and then we are starting it again. So before I give an overview on why we do this and the reasoning behind it, a quick show of hands. How many of you actually work on the platform, right? Meaning developing, customizing, hands-on on a daily basis. Okay, and how many of you heard the term XRM before? Wow. Okay, that's good. That's good. So, just to set some context here. So as far as the session goes, we are trying to get back the whole concept of XRM back in the mainstream here. So 2008 or 9, we pushed the concept of XRM. And the goal there was, we believe the platform, which is the Dynamics CRM platform, also known as XRM, was a product by itself, right? When you buy CRM, you're getting the platform, which was a product by itself. Then around 2010, we kind of toned the message down and then started focusing on selling the core Dynamics CRM application suite, right? Sales, service, and marketing. And over the last 3-4 years, you have seen the application grow extremely rich in all of these individual modules. But the platform grew along with it. And it's even in a better state now than it was 3-4 years ago. So, we took a step back and looked at, what, the platform deserves a lot more. It's a product by itself, and we are underselling it if you just sell it as part of CRM and not actually talk about the platform by itself there. Because all the core workloads that run today, right, the sales, service, and marketing modules run on this platform. It provides all the foundational capabilities that you see in CRM, and it's all enabled by this platform there. And if you just use it for just customizing and extending CRM, you're definitely not using it to its potential there. We really wanted you to start thinking out of the box on where and how you can use this platform in other use cases, in your business here. And that's one of the big reasons why we're starting this push called XRM back again. We wanted to make the platform the product as well. Just to make it clear, right? Today, you still have to buy the whole product, right? You don't get the platform by itself. You buy CRM, the platform comes along with it. That's something we are evaluating. Is it the right model? Should we change? Something we are debating very actively now. But as of today, you have to buy the product to get the platform there. So what are we going to cover in this session today? We're going to cover 2 big topics here, right? One is we're going to talk a little bit about it. Take a step back and look at what is the platform capabilities are, right? What are the capabilities and what kinds of things that you can build with the platform? It's going to be a little step back, a little bigger, broader overview here. And for those of you who have been working on the platform on a daily basis, some of it might be a little redundant here, right? So bear with me as we go through this, because I want to make sure we all get everyone at the same level here. But it doesn't mean we're not going to share anything new. We are going to share some new stuff as well. So Mike Carter will come on stage right after me, and he's going to talk about some of the new things we added in the platform in this release as well there. So there is some new stuff that we will talk about, but that's not the only thing we will talk. We'll talk a little bit broader about the platform and then dive into some new stuff as well there. So just want to make sure we set the expectations correct here. How many of you came to the integration session yesterday? Okay, for those of you that didn't come, you missed out a whole bunch of platform capabilities there as well there. We're not going to cover all of those capabilities here again because it was a 90-minute session just talking about the integration API. If you didn't come yesterday, please go back to that session. Live recording and PowerPoint decks are available there. So please go and take a look at it, because that's a big part of platform investments that we made. We're not covering that today. We're talking about some other investments that we didn't cover yesterday. We'll talk about it today. With that, let's get started. Today, if you look at an enterprise, it's a very interesting situation here, right? If you're an enterprise IT team there, you do have a very interesting challenge, right? Rise of mobile, social, and cloud has opened up a whole different of challenges if you're running an enterprise IT department. Why? Because 3-4 years ago, or even 5 years ago, if you're an enterprise customer, right, and you're an employee there, and you wanted something built for you, what do? You go to your enterprise IT team there, right, your IT department, and most probably, yeah, they will do it, but it might take 2 to 3 years. Who knows, right? Depending on the backlog, even small changes might take a long time. People lived with it. There's not much you can do about it. Fast forward now, there was a study that came out, I think, a few months ago from a security vendor that said most enterprises have up to, on an average, have 1,100 cloud applications or services that people use. And not every one of them is sanctioned by the IT department there. What people do now is if they don't get what they want from their IT, they just go and subscribe to a freemium service somewhere. And it happens much more than we all think here. And that opens up a whole bunch of nightmare situations for the IT departments there. But now you got to manage security and the data going everywhere, and all of these applications, do they fall under compliance and such. So the whole bottom line here is, if you're not agile in your enterprise IT application development, you are going to lose your users there. So agility is a huge, huge problem for enterprise IT development right now. The next challenge is, we had Satya talk yesterday about systems of intelligence, right? We go from system of record to system of engagement to system of intelligence. Those things don't, live in silo by itself. All these applications that run in the enterprise IT, or the DNA there, right? They carry all the data of the enterprises. And to get these systems of intelligence, you need to get these data, get them up, and then, perform some, hardcore, data manipulation and get some insights on it. And to do that, you need very, very tight integration story. And this is a challenge in enterprise as well. How do you do integrations when these applications are built across divisions there? How do you get the data together? It's a big challenge. And again, the other big challenge with enterprise is, again, the data itself. It's secure. It's sensitive. And you really want to be careful how you deal with your data. And what you don't want to do is, have people push your customer data across multiple cloud services there. So trust and compliance is a huge, huge challenge for enterprise applications. And the budgets for IT keep going down every year. And people want you to do more with lesser and lesser budget there. So how do you manage the cost of ownership? All of these are challenges. None of it is new. You guys have seen this. We all have seen this. How do you deal with all of these challenges as you go across? In a typical company, right? If you look at it, we got the traditional sales, service, and marketing departments there. This is the sweet spot. This is where CRM plays a really big role. We sell CRM. It's Dynamics CRM or other suites of products people buy, and they do have their own small IT applications that go along with it. But this is a sweet spot. But that's not the only departments we care about. You also got the other IT departments, right? You got finance IT, legal, HR IT. In Microsoft, we do have multiple IT teams. There's a central IT team. But when they don't get things done, all these little teams build their own little IT teams there. It happens in all the enterprises there. So how do you deal? What kind of applications do they build? All kinds of applications, right? All of these are examples of applications that people do build today. And what happens here is, people go one of two ways, right? And the most common way that people go is they say, OK, I need to build an application. So I start building it on my own. So you build, each department goes out and says, I will build my own little application there. I'll build my own HR application. I'll build my own little financial calculation tool there. So what you end up with is these little applications across departments. And what does it lead to? This leads to islands of data there, right? You got data in each of these little applications that's built in within this application, not exposed anywhere else. So you end up with data silos, multitudes of applications. It's a challenge, and that's not the only challenge, right? The data integration alone is not the challenge there. Think about security. You got to worry about security on each of them. You got to worry about compliance on each of them. You got to worry about encryption standards on each of them. So, everything that you do now has to be dealt with each of these applications. And, other thing that happens often is the fact that people use different application stacks to build it, right? There's a team that says, .NET is great, I'm going to build it on .NET. And here's, a new framework that came in. I'm going to take a dependency on this new open source framework. It's really, really cool. And they do that as well. So you suddenly have a whole stack of different applications built. Supportability becomes a real pain point. How do you support it, right? You don't know what's in support, what's not in support. Who do you go to for expertise? It's a huge challenge there. Well, that's a state today in many, many companies there. But what if you can have a single platform that can provide all of these and provide a solid foundation for you to build upon? And that's where XRM comes into play. XRM is that platform. This is the platform that acts as a foundation for you to build all your applications on. In a nutshell, what XRM is a collection of business application development components. It provides you all the core capabilities that you need where you can assemble and build these line of business applications very easily. And it's just not purely just a software library here, right? You got an entire runtime behind it. You can actually not just build it, you can deploy and run it in online or on-premise. So this is the foundation on which you can build your line of business applications on. And over the next few slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about what capabilities it provides and what you can do with it. And I'm not sitting here and coming and saying, hey, this is a platform we cooked up in the last 6 months. Trust us to run all your enterprise applications on it. No, that's not what I'm saying here. This is the platform that we currently use to run CRM. All of sales, service, and marketing, the entire CRM stack that you see today is built on this platform. And this is the same platform that we run in CRM Online, right? All the tens and thousands of customers that use CRM Online, with thousands of end users or millions of end users, they all use this platform. It's proven. Actually, we do have enterprise workloads running on it for the last 8-9 years in CRM Online specifically there. It's enterprise ready. It's got all the trust and compliance needs built in right there. So it's a platform that you can believe in. Two, it has all the capabilities built in there. So as we evolve the platform, our goal is for you not to reinvent the wheel. So we start adding capabilities into the platform there. So as we start adding capabilities, your application development gets faster and faster and faster, right? So we help you be agile here. And this is not just for you. It's internal to us as well, right? We roll out releases every 6 months. And we can have each application team rebuild the same functionality. So we build it right into the platform. That way our teams can leverage it, and so can you. So that's extremely important, agility. In terms of the other big thing, social, right? Social has been a pretty big thing, and a lot of people have been trying to retrofit social into their applications there. As we start building in the platform, one of the things we are starting to do is integrating social into the core DNA of the platform there. So you don't need to think about how will I social enable my application. It's right inside the platform there. As you build it on top of the platform, social just gets integrated into it. And the last one, right? These are just some of the highlights here. The last one is mobile. Everyone needs a mobile client there. If you have an application that doesn't have a mobile endpoint, it's just useless. And it's just challenging to build mobile applications with all the changing technologies, right? We had tablets, then phones, now wearables. How are you going to deal with it? Don't worry about it, because the platform takes care of all of that stuff. Right? You build once, and it gets deployed across the all these devices here. So this is a platform that provides all of these capabilities and much, much, much more. So it's a slightly different view here, right? If you are a business application developer, what do you need? You need to worry about how to model your business. That's all you should care for. You shouldn't worry about all the messy details that goes underneath it. Leave it to someone else. We will take care of it, right? You worry about how it should look, how people interact with the application there. What's your business model looking like, and how do you model it in your entities? What are the relationships? Define your business. And set the business process and the rules, because that's where your expertise is, and that's where your time is very well spent. Anything else, leave it to us. What do we abstract from you? We abstract all the messy details underneath, right? Whether it's charts, reports, SDK, authorization, authentication, across, rendering across devices, all of that stuff, leave it to us. We will take care of all the messy details underneath. You just focus on your application building, skill set there. And it's just not that, right? You also have integration with Azure. You have integration with all the productivity applications there. So as Microsoft keeps coming up with, we saw Satya showing Dell yesterday. All of these things we will integrate into the platform. As the platform evolves, we're going to build all of this right into the platform. You absolutely don't need to worry about it. You build on this platform, all of this shows up right along with it. So a question I keep running into it, right? I've talked to many folks about this. And the most interesting question I keep running into is, this is great, but how does it fit within what Azure is doing, right? You got your platform, but then Azure has got some services as well. How do you, rationalize between them? Where do you guys fit in? Because people do get confused. Can I use SQL Azure? Is it the same thing as SQL Azure? No, it's not. And here is my attempt. This is my attempt on trying to, help rationalize how we fit in the stack here. And I hope it helps, as we go back and try to answer this question here. We keep hearing the term, IaaS, PaaS, APaaS thrown over very often there, right? So what do these things mean, and where each of us fit in the stack there? So let's start with the bottommost layer, right? This is really the foundation of the data center here. You're talking about the bare metal here, right? You're talking about the machines, the virtual machines, the networking, the deep down, the guts of the data center there. That's the bottommost layer there. We don't do anything there, right? This is not what XRM is about. This is the bottommost layer. Azure's, VMs and CDNs, all of those play a role here. The next layer is foundational PaaS, right? This is essentially what we, target towards DevOps, right? If you're a developer ops, what you do is this is your Dockers, your containers, your storage, blob storage, all of that stuff comes in here. So, you start from the really bottommost layer, for software-defined data center, and then go up the PaaS layer for DevOps, right? And this is where Azure plays today a very, very strong role, and it will continue to play a role here. So the next one is the PaaS services, right? This is the things that we today as developers use quite a bit, right? When we say moving to the cloud, they either use VMs or then talk about saying, I'll use SQL Azure, or I will use Azure Machine Learning as a service, or a bunch of the other things, right? Azure Mobile Services. These are great, great examples of PaaS services there. You still need to do a lot of work. If you're building an application on SQL, you still need to create the database. You need to create the UI. You need to create all the different mobile clients. All of the work you still need to do, but it provides a much higher abstraction on where you start from, right? You don't start from getting a machine, installing Windows and stuff. It provides a much higher level of abstraction, and this is where most people start their application development today. Then I'm going to skip a couple of boxes here and then hit straight down, and then I'll fill the gaps there. Then we have what we call as software as a service. This is what Office 365 or Dynamics CRM is, right? You're at the topmost layer there. Here you don't think about anything. You're getting pre-built application with a little bit of customization, and you just sign up and then start using it. So this is the stack that looks today, right? Most people either use the SaaS or they go to the PaaS layer and start building applications on top. As we started evolving in this journey of abstracting each layer one over the other, right? There is a gap there, right? Should we leave it at the PaaS where it is right now, or we can add another layer of abstraction that makes it a lot more easier, provides a lot more common functionality that people use on a regular basis to build applications there? We can, and that's essentially what comes down to as the PaaS story there, which is where XRM fits in very, very nicely, right? So this is all the stuff that you abstract on top of your PaaS layer there, right? It provides all the capabilities that you need there, right? It's much beyond SQL Server and what they offer there. So all the capabilities of XRM you're talking about, this is where it fits in. So this is in the layer of stack between Azure and XRM. This is how we stack, and we do take a big dependency on Azure as well there. So as you can see, XRM runs can run, right? There are few services today run on it. So just to be clear, when you run CRM online today, we run in partly on Azure, partly on our own data centers there. And that's something that we are actively changing and migrating towards, running it fully on Azure Stack. But XRM takes a dependency on Azure, right? All the services at Azure. It fits in very, very, very nicely there. And this is the state today. You know what? In the PaaS layer, we might see more boxes in the future. And the boxes could be added by us, or it could be added by Azure or other Microsoft teams in there. But they all will work seamlessly together there. So it's just a higher level of abstraction, and XRM plays a pretty big role today in that higher level of abstraction there. Hopefully it makes sense. Okay. What I'm going to talk about next is my top 10 reasons on why you should consider XRM. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike to continue on with some more fun stuff here. So it provides, just to summarize what I talked about, it provides a single platform. This is the only platform you need to worry about in your in your enterprise, right? You take a dependency on this platform, then you don't need to worry about data silos, you don't need to worry about integration, you don't need to worry about all the other challenges that we talked about previously in enterprise application development. It's there. It's built in, it provides a foundation, and you can have a single foundation for all your enterprise line of business application development. CRM is essentially an out-of-the-box relationship tracking application. And I'm really simplifying it. I'm really abstracting it, right? But every line of business application, most of them are relationship tracking application in some sense. Take a look of example of asset management, right? You got assets, you got people, and everyone can have one or more assets. That's how you define it. Most applications kind of fall into this category when you look at enterprise line of business there. And this is the sweet spot where XRM plays a really good role. Build once, access anywhere. This is huge. This is huge, right? This is, in my mind, one of the biggest selling factors. You don't really worry about the UI. We take care of it. You model it. We render it across all devices today, and we'll probably do more as the industry changes there. So this is absolutely a big selling point. You should consider it. You don't need to worry about mobile application development because you do get a client or a multitude of clients with the platform. Integration is not a problem anymore because we do. Yesterday, we had a whole 90-minute session on how we seriously take integration within the platform, right? Integration is a pretty big deal for us, and we handle all the challenges of data coming in and going out there. This is a pretty big deal for us, and we have been handling it in the platform for a while, and we will continue to do that. So it's something that's built in the platform there. Deployment option. This is very, very interesting. So when you look at deployment, right, you have the option today of deploying it on-premise because I don't trust the cloud. Whatever that cloud thing is, I don't trust it. I want to run it all on-premise. Not a problem. Do it. At some point, you believe that, you know what, cloud can actually give some benefits. Take your workload, migrate it up to CRM Online. It will work. We can host it for you, and you don't need to do too much to change there. So it's a very seamless migration back and forth. But we just have another option here that you've seen. If you're looking at it, it says Azure IaaS. So today, we can actually take CRM on-premise, right, and say that, you know what, I don't really want it to go to CRM Online. That's losing a lot of control for me. But you can actually go in and deploy CRM on-premise on an Azure IaaS infrastructure if you want. So, Azure is getting up some premium offerings that will be announced soon, and it'll be probably in the next couple of months. We made an announcement at EMEA Convergence as well, but hopefully in a couple of months, it'll be a fully supported model. You can take your CRM on-premise application and run it in Azure infrastructure as a service there. So this gives a sweet spot right between moving entirely to the cloud or staying completely on-premise. So you decide where you want to go. So as you can see, we provide a multitude of options that might fit your needs there. And it seamlessly move across these options at any point in time. Upgrades, we take care of the upgrades. As long as you're within the supported configuration, do not worry about upgrades. It's our headache, not yours. We'll make sure that it's backward compatible, the data gets migrated, and all that headache is ours there. You just focus on building the application there. And it's a fully supported Microsoft product, so not worry about support here. Again, it's just to highlight the fact that this is a primary product that we do support. Click and configure. This is extremely interesting here, right? As we start building these, I don't know if you've seen the platform evolving, but over the past few releases, we started moving up the stack, right? We needed to write a lot of code for really simple things. What we're trying to do is, you can't eliminate the need for a developer, but you can, move the bar high on when you need development skills to do it. Because the moment you put any kind of development, like plugins, coding, the moment you write code, it's just not the, the writing of the code there. Then it comes with, where do you store it, the versioning, the team foundation, or any other source control you got to deal with, backward compatibility. It just adds a whole layer of complexity the moment you write a single piece of code, even if it's a JavaScript client-side code. So we want to make sure that you keep the bar really, really high on when you have the need to write a code there. So we are actually continuing to improve on it, and you'll see a lot more of those coming in the next few releases as well. And it works. If you have a Microsoft ecosystem, it works seamlessly well together there. It brings down your total cost of ownership. And finally, skill set, right? Even if you want to do it, we try to standardize. And C# is all you need to know. There's no special programming language you need to learn to extend it. And here is my top 10 reasons why you should consider the platform there. Bottom line, if there's one message you want to take, we do the heavy lifting. So you can focus on your core application development there. So that's my pitch. It's 25 minutes in, so I'm going to hand it over to Mike. And he's going to walk us through some more interesting things here.
How does this relate? You put the Office products up there. What's the relationship between XRM and SharePoint?
I didn't specifically put SharePoint there because that's a very interesting question there, right? So SharePoint and XRM do have some overlap. It has some of the similar capabilities what XRM does offer, but this is my take on it. So I don't have any SharePoint folks in the room to defend their product there. So it's my take on this here. But SharePoint is ideal. It's great for simple, really simple applications there. But it's not really built for some of the enterprise workloads that we do. You can't really run a CRM on SharePoint today. It doesn't have the scale, some of the enterprise needs that we currently have in CRM that's in SharePoint. SharePoint is not built. Although, yeah, they do sell it along those ways there. You can build some really small interdepartmental applications, but not really at the scale. You can build a CRM on SharePoint. It depends on the scale of the applications that you're looking at, right? If it's really small, really small expense tracking or holiday vacation tracking, table, that works. That's great. But as you move up the stack, it might change. And I'm sure there are folks in SharePoint that might disagree to my statement there, but that's how we see it, at least there. And we are working with the SharePoint team to get the messaging, so that people do have it. So there's a lot of talks going behind the scenes to figure out how we have the right messaging. It's not there landed yet, but the reason I put in the whole platform stack is specifically to let you all know that we at Microsoft are working towards making sure that we do have a very consistent messaging across all our platforms so that and customers don't worry about which platform should I pick.
Okay, thank you.
Similar to this question, SharePoint maybe a little more specifically. What is your strategy with SharePoint, and how would you leverage SharePoint
So
as it pertains to XRM and CRM?
So, more than SharePoint, Office as a whole, we are working very closely with them. If you look at all the other Office products, there is a really nice, story that, that they work together, whether it's a productivity tool, so like, Excel or OneNote. We saw some demos there, how they all work together really well. Link is another great example how we work together. SharePoint, we look at it primarily around the collaboration aspect right now, the document, and that's one place we are looking at it very, very deep right now. There are other places we are exploring, but collaboration, document collaboration is what we are looking at SharePoint from a, synergy point of view right now. Come again?
How does the Lightning framework?
You're talking about Salesforce Lightning Framework? No, I'm not familiar with that. Sorry. Yeah, Gautam, if you hear, are you familiar? Gautam is our architect here. Gautam, are you familiar with the Lightning Framework on SharePoint?
You might want to repeat what he's...
So, I think let's park this question here. Gautam is there. Please connect with him after he's a product architect. He can answer that a little bit more. Again, in Microsoft, there's a lot of these little, app frameworks coming in, and we are trying to rationalize all of them right now there. Thank you. I'm going to, park the questions towards the end there if you don't mind. I've just got to go. Okay, one more question.
So most of the product, like Microsoft will follow the standard, like CMS compliant or CMS specific, at least SharePoint can talk to multiple products at the same time. When you build XRM, do you follow specific standards, industry standard for integration with other tools?
So one of the things we want to do is, we want to get to our endpoints, which are standard. So yesterday we were talking about integration there. We want to get to OData 4 protocol. So that's essentially provides a very common standard how you can move data in and out of that system using your endpoints there, right? So that's the level that we would go, at least for now.
Okay, so there's no standard basically.
No, OData is the standard, right? OData 4.0. OData, yeah. OData is a standard we are, standardizing on endpoint. So we'll be getting a new, if you missed the session yesterday, we are releasing a preview of our new OData endpoints, OData 4 endpoint, and it will come in later this year in a full-fledged support there. It's a preview mode coming in spring and a full-fledged mode coming later this year. But that will be a parallel endpoint to what we got today. We're not going to discontinue the endpoint we have today. That will start evolving to, most of these modern needs in terms of integrations and such. Okay,
All right.
go ahead, Mike.
Excellent. Thank you, Venkat. So for the next 40 minutes or so, I'm going to talk first. I'm going to give you a whirlwind overview of the platform capabilities, and maybe that'll answer some of the questions about differentiators between us and other frameworks and platforms. And yeah, Microsoft has many of these, so I can understand some of the confusion and concern about which one do I pick and why. Maybe this will answer some of your questions, but then we'll try to take questions a little bit later. But first off, I'm Mike Carter, as Venkat introduced me. I'm a program manager on his team. I own the data platform, data services, basically the customization tools, query, search, those kind of fun pieces of the platform. So a lot of this is my daily bread and butter of what I'm thinking about on a daily basis. If I was to simplify kind of the story here of what I'm going to be talking about, when you're building a line of business application, the way I look at it, you're taking requirements coming in from your business leaders, your thought leaders, your VP of sales, whoever, and you're trying to convert that into reality, right? You're trying to make it actually something tangible that you can then run. And converting it to reality may mean that the requirement itself needs to be massaged a little bit. And actually the goal of the platform here is to make it as little massaging needed as possible and with as little custom code as possible, right? Taking business requirements, convert them into something that actually works without you having to write all the code and without you having to essentially do more than just click through a bunch of forms. And today, there are going to be many reasons why you'll need to write custom code. Enterprise applications will always need to do this. But day by day and release by release, we're working to kind of reduce the commonality between different, or I should say, increase the commonality between all the different ways that you're building an application and turning it into a core capability of the product itself and the platform specifically. So that's kind of where we're going, and that's what I'm actually going to talk about now. I'm going to give you a whirlwind overview of all of the different capabilities of the XRM platform. So There are three main categories I'm going to talk about: build, integrate, and manage. I wouldn't call these phases, right? I mean, you do this at various points throughout your development cycle. But if we talked about the build, this to me is where you start, right? You're really thinking about what is it that I want to build. And it starts with your model, right? You're going to model the data that you need to store and describe how it fits into even internally in the application. What are your relationships? What is it that you actually want to build? You'll put security on it. So you could either at the row level define who can access this, and we have many different ways to secure your data, from ownership to sharing to team selling, which you may have been aware of now with team access. And then also now we have hierarchical security models where you can define what almost looks like an org chart and say who has access to certain rows based on the inheritance model of something that looks like an org chart. You have business rules, right? You can define essentially business rules in the modeling of your application. You don't have to go out and write code for every single little thing that you want to do. If it's a validation or some form of a little message that you'd like to see, display in our UI, it all can be done via the click-through designer. There's process and workflow automation, access anywhere, multi-language support. You can switch back and forth between languages per user. You can have your organization, your application running in multiple languages. The collaboration and communication ready, the integration with SharePoint, document storage is a very common scenario for us. Hierarchical visualization. I'll show this actually in the UI, and I'll have a demo kind of one of our applications that we built internally kind of as a test kind of a application, just to kind of give us some context here to talk about. Calculated fields and roll-up fields. This is a big improvement that we made in the fall release, and it was a big need that we had to basically model calculated fields and roll-ups. Search, which is something that we're working on all the time, trying to improve how you can find data out of your application, and I'll talk about that actually a little bit later when we're talking about some new capabilities. And then core localization itself, being able to take business data, for example, product names, and localize them at the business data level. So with all of that said, let's actually take a look at some of what I'm talking about. To kind of speed up the process here, I wanted to basically click through some of the UI and kind of talk about it. So this is customization tools. When you go to the customization tools editor and you want to build a solution, this is the first thing that you'll see. The first place you'd probably want to start is an entity editor, and you want to add an entity to the system. And just arbitrarily, we want to create a new entity, and whatever we want to call it. The core entity itself has a lot of capabilities built on it. There's a lot of out-of-the-box types of capabilities that you get. If it's notes, activities, you can check boxes and essentially add all of these capabilities without having to build them yourselves, and they'll just appear in the UI without you having to do any of your core coding. So just because you want to build your own application does not mean you need to do a lot of work to get the kind of core capabilities that you see in maybe the CRM sales application or service. You can also integrate that into your own applications as well. So as you're creating your entity, the most common first thing you're going to do is add fields. But we've kind of made fields a little bit more complicated now, because instead of just being what we would call a simple field, which just means you're storing the data in the database using this field, we also have calculated fields and roll-ups. So off of that, if you were to choose, let's say, to start with a calculated field, so here we're doing a calculated field based on, so we got some rules, you got a condition, and then we have an action, and then we have the calculation that we're defining. So it's 40 times the CRM rate, total hours. This is all calculated on the server. So that's actually the biggest value that we'll have here, is it's actually done all the way down at the bottom level of SQL. We'll do a calculation and it's live. When you retrieve the row from the database, you'll get this calculation executed, and you'll have live data in it, and it will be then displayed. And so it comes through the SDK, comes through the web client when you're viewing it, and you get that live sort of experience with the calculated field. With the roll-up, it's similar to a calculated field, and a lot of the definition experience here is very similar. But this is more about taking the data coming from your related records and kind of rolling it up, basically doing calculations that add up numerical values from your child rows. It could even be hierarchical, right? Going down several layers and adding it all up and then rolling it up into a single value and having that value be represented at every level of the hierarchy. These are actually cached. These values are cached in the database, and you can, in the client, actually refresh them. I'll show what that looks like. This is primarily for performance optimization, because we don't want to have to recalculate that every time you bring that up, because at various levels of the hierarchy, it's going to have different values, and there could be many different values that we need to calculate. Yes?
Are these available
Through the views? Yes, they're just a field like any other. Yep. Yeah, these are just fields. They'll appear to be like any other fields in your on your entity, and then they'll surface the values that you would get through the views, through the forms, through the SDK. You'll always be able to access these basically anywhere. Right. So now that's basically kind of defining the core of the application. The next step is to kind of relate these things together. So you've created an entity, and now you want to say that this entity has different types of relationships to other pieces of the product, whether it's a one-to-many, so for the SQL DBAs or just general DBAs out there, being able to relate your entities together between, with one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many relationships, depending on what your purposes are. And that's kind of the core of building the application. What we call this is the ripple effect, right? So adding an entity gives you many capabilities that you can then build on top of it. If it just starts at the DB tables and fields, that's at the very core. I'm just storing data in the database, but that's actually not going to really give you much, and we don't consider that to be a business application development platform. If you wanted that, just stay in SQL. What you really want is to then build on top of that with the relationships, the business rules, right, being the core business rules themselves, the forms, so how do you access the data, and you could define those once and use them in multiple clients, and the views, like we're talking about the ability to actually query your data out of the database. But then you want to get access to that data. So we have web services that expose the data itself. We've got formulas that you can actually use, and I'd call those calculated fields, to kind of surface the data in maybe an interesting way without having to write custom code in order to be able to identify what that value should be. Then you've got workflow. And this, by the way, workflow is one of the key differentiators, I think, between us and other kind of Microsoft platforms. Workflow exists, obviously, elsewhere, but to the degree that we've integrated into the product, workflow is a core capability of the XRM platform. So being able to execute an asynchronous business operation, which I'll talk about in a minute a little bit, that's a kind of a key differentiator. Then we have reports. These run on SSRS, right, the SQL Server reporting services. And we can get the reports that you know and love when you're developing in the SQL integrated into CRM, and you can see your data the way you want to see it. Then at the very top, we have all of the different clients, right? Our dashboards, we've got mobile, we've got the tablet, and all of those type of clients consuming the data. All of this comes from just being able to define that core entity and then working your way out from there. So now I'm going to move on through the kind of the rest of the flow here. This kind of is a little bit of the building on that ripple effect now. We've got the entity defined, we've got the relationships defined, the fields, and we want to kind of now consume these in different places. So you can define a form, and the form definition it's been in the product for quite a while, and this is kind of a core capability of CRM. But once you define that form, you're really describing how it should look in multiple places, right? So this isn't just for the web client. We'll also consume this form in the tablet application. If you put a field, for example, there on the, let's see if I can. If you add a field to the definition, that field will appear in multiple locations. It'll be in whatever client that you're going to consume it from. As long as it's consuming our forms, you'll be able to see it. And then views, you can define core views in the product. These are basically the queries, and you can configure them as you want, and then all of your users will have access to it. They could bring it up. Well, there's many views obviously defined in the CRM application, active accounts and the like, and you can also build your own. So you can build your own views that you want to basically present to your users. So this is kind of getting access to your data. Business rules, this is something that we added sometime last year. I can't remember if it was the spring or the fall. And first of all, it was only accessible on the client. And business rules, when you define them, it's about kind of integrating what used to be either JavaScript code that you had to write or C# code that you had to write. And it can be validation, it could be updating a field, it could be displaying a message, sort of as what I was talking about earlier. This is actually very powerful, right? You can attach business rules at various locations, right? You could attach it to a field, you could attach it to an entity, that when this field, for example, is displayed in the UI, in the web client UI, this is the logic that I want to run, right? And there's validation, there's actions that you can take. This isn't the business rule session, but that's kind of the core capability of what we provide in the business rules. And it's particularly interesting because you don't have to write your code. You can actually use configuration here in the UI to build your logic. Then we have the business process, right? So if you've seen the web client, and I'll show you for CRM, and I'm assuming most of you have, there's a set of stages at the top, and especially in the out-of-box application, you'll notice for the sales process, we have a built-in business process flow. And these are the steps that you should take at various stages in your sales process, whether it's starting from the very beginning all the way through to closing a deal. There is a guided flow that you want your users to go through so that they know what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to kind of be thinking about at any stage. This can be heavily customized, right? You can replace the entire flow, obviously, out in the out-of-box application for whatever your custom application needs, right? You can create the steps that you want your users to go through. So this is particularly interesting, especially because it's something that CRM users are coming to expect in their application and when they're building an application. And so now you can actually put it in your custom application and make it look like your application completely from the ground up. And I'll actually show an example of how this has been customized for the application that we're building here. Then we have workflow. This has been in the product for a long time, so I'm assuming most of you are very aware of the workflow, so I wasn't going to spend too much time on this. But essentially, these are asynchronous processes that run based on an action. You could be updating a field, you could be creating a new record. Based on that, I want to then take action, and it's asynchronous, so it's not going to be part of the actual transaction that you're making. It's something that gets kicked off later. We have an asynchronous workflow engine that then will run, and then it processes it, kind of on a later basis. And we continually try to make sure that that later is as soon as possible. But that's one nice thing about the asynchronous process is that it doesn't actually impact the performance of your running application. It's something that happens later. Then we have custom code. So if we take a pause here, the goal of all of the capabilities that you've seen so far is making it so you don't have to write custom code. So at this point, you've got a nicely, or hopefully a very nicely configured application. You're building out all of the capabilities that you need, but you might need a plugin, right? You need something that you need to hook in at the platform data execution. We call it the pipeline, right? When we do a read, it goes through several stages, and you can hook into that at various points. I'm sure there's some developers in the room, and you know this very well. But when you hook in, you can say, I want my custom code to be executed. In CRM Online, it's run in a sandbox, so we kind of isolate that from customers from each other. But in an on-prem, you just kind of run whatever code basically that you want, because you can hurt yourself as much as you want. But the custom code itself could be run at various stages. It could be a pre-processing stage, a post-processing. It could be on an update. It could be on a read. But at various places, you can register these plugins to run your custom code. The nice thing here, what I'm trying to kind of really show here, is that we have development tools that integrate with Visual Studio, right? And I think we've had a session here at Convergence, I think it was yesterday, where we went through all of these, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. But there's templates, there's the SDK itself, the being able to connect to your application. You can use these to build forms applications, like your own form, or all the way through to a plugin itself. So you can build your code in C#, you can build Visual Basic, whatever your preferred .NET language of choice is. And then also as we start kind of building out this OData endpoint that Venkat mentioned, we're trying to get it where now we're REST-based, and we don't have to worry about what language you choose. As long as you can understand REST, you can use your language of choice to basically access our application, access the platform. And then this one is at the very end is a web resource. You can have JavaScript web resources. If you define your code in JavaScript, this web resource will then be added to the form. When you load the form, it can then execute the code that you need. And then you've reached the final application. And when we have your finished application, all of that hard work that you did to define your forms and that will also show in the tablet. So this is the mobile tablet application. And it's really a powerful feature that we don't really talk about, I think, enough, is that just defining it once, consuming it everywhere is, I think, very powerful. And mobility is a very important scenario for us in making it so that you can access it not only on your desktop, but then from your mobile devices, tablets, and then your phone. All right, so that was, let's take a break, take a deep breath. That went very quickly. I didn't even actually go in that much of a detail, so I'll go much more in detail in some of our new capabilities. I am making some assumptions that you're aware of the platform in a little bit, but I kind of also wanted to address, some of you that may have not been able to see the platform and just haven't, you're new to this whole area. I want to kind of familiarize you with that. So integrate. This was, by the way, the big topic of conversation yesterday. That we presented an entire 90-minute session, as Venkat mentioned, on our what's new in the integration space. It also covered, though, how do we think about integration? What are we currently able to do, at least in some ways, with integration? And then we were talking about tomorrow, what's coming in the spring. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but the top row is, I think, the most important for us. It's getting that standards-based OData REST endpoint. And so that's something we talked about yesterday, but we have a preview. You can, when you get the spring release, if you're kind of waiting for that, and when it does come out, there's going to be a preview of the new OData endpoint. I can't stress enough. We want you to take a look at it and give us feedback. Open the Connect items. I'm hoping you've heard about Microsoft Connect, the way to give feedback to the product team. Take a look at it. Give us the feedback. One reason why we're calling it not for production use is that we want to be able to change this at a later date. Basically, in the final release, we will, whenever we release an endpoint, we want to make it so we will never change the endpoint so that you can build an application on it with confidence. And that's why when we call it a preview, we will maybe change it later. Not just maybe, we definitely will change it later. But at least we were able to give it to you early so that we can gather the feedback. So I did want to take an extra time to talk about that because it is so important for us to basically get that right. So mashups, you can do client-side mashups. That's particularly being able to bring your data from CRM and put it into your client application. Or it could be the other way around, right? You could take your CRM form, the XRM out-of-box form, and add data from your other application, your external. Maybe you have a master for leads. You could display those leads in the form through web client integration. Standards-based OAuth. So the OAuth kind of goes across a lot of the ways that we authenticate. We authenticate through the web client. You can authenticate through the SDK using OAuth. Bulk data API and then mobile SDK. All of these are ways that you can actually access the data and integrate either outside in or even now we're going inside out, right? So CRM can then integrate to external data sources. Manage. So you've got your application built, right? It's deployed, it's running. But how do you keep it up? How do you keep it running so that it's not going to actually go down? One nice thing about going to CRM Online is that we do have a team of dedicated service engineers out there trying to keep your application up and running on a regular basis. They're not going to fix your code problems, but they will at least make sure that the infrastructure is there, it's running, they're patching it, particularly security patches are being applied, underlying security patches to SQL, always on a regular basis being applied. This was all talked about during an online session yesterday, so if you're trying to kind of interested in how we run the online service, Scott Thompson had an online session yesterday. A lot of the management here is in the online space, and I'll kind of go through that. Solution versioning, that's a core capability. The ability to kind of package up your application into a solution and then deploy it to different environments is kind of a core capability of the product. You can do that on-premise, online, but now we've added the ability in recent releases to version that and say this is version 1, version 2, and then keep kind of incrementing your version going forward. And we're doing many improvements in the future to kind of make that more rich and robust and have a nice, solid foundation to build your solutions off of and kind of make our ISVs happy. So the sandbox environments, that's particular to online. That's the ability to basically say that you have a production environment, that a sandbox environment, it's priced differently, but when you have that sandbox environment, you can do your development work there, and that's where you would, basically if you wanted to break something, do it in the sandbox, don't do it in your production organization. That's kind of the general goal there. We talked about the deployment choices. I think the Venkat kind of covered that pretty well. We've got the data access and management API. That's the ability to kind of get a little bit of under the hood type of access that you need. Scalable, maintainable, upgradable on your terms. The two middle items are ones that we're taking care of, right? Trying to make it as scalable as possible. The bottom item is what we call customer-driven upgrade, right? And that's, if you are familiar with CRM Online, in the past we had different release models where sometimes the patches would be deployed without you actually being able to have a say in the matter, right? And so now we've made the kind of the control, put it all in your end, so that you can decide when the updates are applied on our 6-month cycle, right? We'll still be making patches on a regular basis, particularly for security patches, things that we will just be doing on the back end. But if it's a major update, could be disruptive, we let you decide when you want to take that. So I'm going to move on and talk now a little bit about a tangible example of an application, and then give you a quick demo of the application, and then I'll move on and talk about some new capabilities. And question? Yeah. Offline, meaning like Outlook client offline or Mocha offline? No, I don't have anything to talk about in that area. So. Oh, sure, yeah. I would definitely direct you to the MSDN or TechNet and to take a look at Outlook client offline and Mocha offline. I believe we have different sessions where we'll cover those type of core client capabilities kind of at a deeper level. Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the scenario here of what this application is. Internally at Microsoft, we have a program called the Giving Campaign. It's about corporate giving and about being charitable. The executives are very competitive about this. They really like competing with each other to see whose organization is more charitable. And they make it as a point of pride to say that my organization is the most charitable. So this was just kind of positing a what if. What if we wanted to build on the XRM platform a way for an executive to take a look at how the donation process is going through any given giving campaign. And so we kind of build out the concept of what that would take. And so first of all, we talked about, well, what do we need to keep track of? First, we want to keep track of donors. These are people, contacts, basically, that are giving money. Next we have donations. So that's an individual. You are buying something at an auction. You're donating to an organization. And then there's events. In this case, the event is, let's say, the Giving Campaign 2015, and then you can roll up all the donations for the current year's giving campaign and see, oh, look, we're ahead of last year, or that kind of thing. So let me jump over, and we're kind of almost an hour in, and this is the first demo, and that's just not acceptable. So we've been talking too much. Let's actually see some actual running code. All right, there we are. So we can see it. So the main point I want to talk about here is how different this looks from the out-of-box CRM sales and service and marketing applications, and how it looks the same. So you come to the first homepage here. In this case, it's just a dashboard, but it's a different kind of dashboard with different charts. So we have some up here in the upper left-hand corner, we have active items, right? These are auction items. You can see who's got the most valuable auction item, and you got, I think that's you and 3 friends have lunch with somebody, that kind of thing, because it was really worth $6,000. And then you could also see on the donor side who's the most active. And of course, this is all just kind of sample data. So we put our big boss in there, Jujar on the PM side, as being the most charitable, because of course he's got the deep pockets and he can actually be charitable. So one other kind of piece of this is the sitemap. I actually didn't talk too much about kind of the deep kind of client customization capabilities. when you open this in the out-of-box CRM application, you'll see sales, service, marketing, and that kind of thing. You can customize that and make it so that you see what you want to see. In this case, event management is what we're looking for. And so if I click on event management, and by the way, this is the current version of the product out in the CRM Online today. This is running in this demo is running in CRM Online. So what you can also customize is what appears in the navigation bar. So in this case, there's only 3 entities that we're really interested in, or 3 pieces of data. There's the events, there's the donations, and there's the donors. And so the first thing I want to look at is, let's go to the donors. And we could see essentially a list of, these are all of the donors that we're currently tracking. And there's one interesting capability here, and you'll see that along here on the left, is it is basically showing that there's a hierarchy here. And you can actually view the data in a hierarchical view to kind of see how things are rolling up. And I picked Carlos here, but let's go up a level to Jujar. And if you look at the total org chart spending here, that's a roll-up field. That's being calculated on the fly. Well, it's actually, as I said, cached, to show how the donations are looking for people underneath them. And it actually goes in multiple levels. Right here in the UI, I'm only showing 1 layer deep. But if I was to click on the render, it would show if somebody's underneath him. I don't think there is anybody underneath him. This is all, if you basically define that so this is a kind of going down a depth. You define your relationships. You define that the relationship is hierarchical. You add your data. It's displayed in an org chart here, basically the hierarchical view. And you don't have to do any custom coding. All of the values here, you define a roll-up field once, and this is how you can see the values here. Even all the way down to, at an individual level, these values are then calculated based on the current status of the application. So as one other quick scenario here, let's go to donations. Let's create a new one, and we can show how these values get updated. So this is a new form, right? So this is something that was built for this application. Nothing here is using out-of-the-box modeling capabilities. It is using what we get from the form engine, though. And you'll see that there's a new process flow here. So you could either enter data through the process flow, or you can enter it down in the form itself. I'm going to enter it here, and so I'm going to say that the name of this is Play Catch with Russell Wilson, because he's my buddy, and now that he came for the keynote, he and I are tight as sticks. And I got him to donate some time, maybe 3 or 4 catches back and forth. I would say the fair market value of that is about $1,000, right? Because he probably makes $1,000 an hour. So the event here is, let's say it's an auction. Oh, no, sorry. It's the event here is the giving campaign. The donor is me. So you can see lookups here surfacing through the stage UI. The description is playing catch, yoo-hoo. And then there's the donation type. It's an auction item. So all of this has been applied, and then you can actually save the item. It'll save it with the data, playing catch with Russell Wilson. But then now I've already entered my data, and I'm good to go. I can move on. This is essentially the stage here, and to make it a little bit clearer, is create new auction item, right? So those are all the things that you need to fill out if you really want to make sure that everything is there when you create your auction item. And so now, since I've done that, I can move on to the next stage, and I manually click that. The stage moves on, and now the expectation is that it's an active auction item, and it's ready to be, put up for bid. And so what you're looking for here is the winning bid, who was the bidder, and whether or not they've paid. Right. So that's a set of data that at this stage is the most interesting to us. And so for now, I'll just kind of leave that alone. But what I would like to show is that if I go back over to the donors and I look for me, since I was listed as the donor, it is going to, it should significantly up my, no, it's not. Why didn't it update my values? Yeah, it shouldn't have to be bid. It's just kind of this is just how the application was built. But here, sure, let's say that it was, somebody actually ended up spending $2,000 on it. Jujar was the one who actually did, and let's say that they paid. That may have been my fault that I just didn't update that. Now, hopefully that's enough. I think it should be enough to, actually go over here and look at donors. And if not, we'll just move on. Yeah, see, I don't know what's going on. Well, that's just kind of how we built the application. The way the application was built is that the donor is the one that gets credit for the donating of the money, but it's just kind of a little silly side thing of, this was working yesterday when I ran it. So I'm going to, yeah, but you're right, I should be able to see under Jujar. And one of the things, kind of the core point I wanted to make here is that if you looked at this value here, total org charity spend, this value, if it's not up to date, it will show you when the last time it was calculated. That's actually the kind of the core scenario that I wanted to show you, and that you can actually click refresh. And so I'm not sure why that's not actually working, but like here's the donated value, here's the total individual. So yeah, we should be able to, and like total purchase value. Yeah, so it's just not working. But trust us, it works on the real application. I know. All right, so let's move on, and I'm going to go back to the deck just for a minute, and let's talk about the future, right? Let's talk about some things that are coming in our spring release, and there's some fun things coming, right? So not too many. Like if you attended the integration session yesterday, we talked about a lot of integration. So integration was a very big scenario for our spring release. We have what I'd call key improvements for this release around the general platform capabilities. So the first is improvements to calculations. So if I was to give you a little bit of a history here, in Vega, which was our fall release, that was the release last fall, that's when we introduced calculated fields and this new type of roll-up field. In the spring, we're adding functions. So for calculated fields, you can't add a custom function, meaning that you can't run custom code. It's at the SQL level, so we kind of have to basically implement that for you, or at least enable it for you. And so we added a couple new functions here, now and datediff. I'll give you a quick little demo of that. And then in the roll-up field side, you could aggregate an activity pointer, which what this meant before is that the different type of activities, for those who are familiar with activities, you could have multiple phone calls and different ways to communicate with people. Before, you'd have to aggregate them on each individual activity type. Now you can aggregate them together by having a roll-up on the activity pointer that aggregates values from every one of the different activity types. It's kind of more of it's a very targeted improvement, but it is something that was a very common ask. And that's, by the way, that's one reason why I can't recommend enough that you go out to Connect, add your feedback, give us the votes, right? So go out and vote on items that are already out there, because this is the sort of thing that comes from that, right? Getting the feedback and getting it into the product. So real quick, let me do another demo. All right, so this is the new release. So kind of the main set of differences. And for those of you who haven't seen the UI, what I'll point out to is my main favorite new feature is the navigation in the nav bar here. I've seen quite a few thumbs up and that people like it. So yeah, no, it's my personal favorite. The other thing that I'll just kind of highlight real quick is if we go over to customizations, there's theming. We've demoed this, I think, at Convergence and other sessions, but I thought I would just reiterate it real quickly. If you don't like this blue nav bar at the top, you don't like Microsoft Dynamics CRM here, you can customize it. And so I pre-built a theme here. I say publish, and then I have to refresh the form. And then now it's reskinned, right? So you've got a color to the nav bar. This here, Microsoft Convergence, is just an image, right? So it could be whatever you want. If it's a logo that you want to show, it has to be, I think, about 40 pixels high, maybe 400 pixels, 500 pixels wide. So you have a little bit of real estate to play with, but it's whatever you want it to be, right? So it's something that you can basically do on your own. Well, no, so this is the nav bar. The nav bar is common across everything. So this is essentially now, it's the kind of the anchor. It's the header that's on every basic form in CRM. If it has the nav bar, it will have this theme on it. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I definitely would expect it to be. When I say already, or when you say already, no, because it's not coming until the spring release. So just to be clear, these are all features coming in the spring release. But when it is released, yes, it should be documented. Yep. Yes, and that's the spring release to CRM Online. Yes. All right. So I think I have a solution open. So in this scenario, what I really want to show is a calculated field using a date diff operator. And so all we have to do here is create a new field. And the field that I actually want to create here is, and we're doing this on the case form. So I want to do case age in minutes. A lot of times you'll have a hot case, right? That's the case that you really need to take action on quickly. And so what we want you to be able to do is now essentially show that this case is, how old is it in the minutes? So maybe 15 minutes may be really critical for you. And then maybe you want to take action after it exceeds 15 minutes. With this, you can actually show it on the form. So when you bring it up, you can show how old this case is in minutes. The way you do that is by picking a whole number, and then instead of simple, you pick calculated. And then I'll save it. And since you noticed when I selected calculated, a little edit button popped up here, and that's the editing the formula. So you're editing the definition of the calculation itself. And this is what came in the fall release last year. So the first thing I want to do is set a condition. And so on the current entity case, I want to say when the status is active. So I only want this calculation to actually show something when the status is active. So when it's not active anymore, I don't really care too much about the value. I want to essentially show, and this right now I'm working around kind of a bug in the preview bits here. Which, by the way, this is running against CRM Online, the current preview build. So it's if you see anything, it's not my fault. No, I'm just kidding. It probably is my fault because I should have known that it was there. But that is something I did know was there. So in this case, what I want to do, and by the way, like one nice thing here is that we have IntelliSense. So if you're familiar with Visual Studio, we have completion to show you essentially what's going on the back. And we'll do diff in minutes. And underneath there, I would like to say created on. So I'm saying the difference between the created on and now in minutes. And that's it. So all I'm saying is like, so we had the first value, start value is when the row was created, the case was created, and then the end value is now. Show me what the difference of that is in minutes. And save and close. And I can close this. And the only other thing I need to do right now is, after I publish the customizations, because this is just a test org, so it shouldn't take very long, hopefully. And then I'm going to edit the form and actually just show this on the form. That's kind of the core next step that you need to do. It will not, fields do not show on the form unless you add them to the form specifically. And so I'm picking the core form here, and then along the right here, you'll see the case age in minutes show up. I'm just going to kind of throw it here in the top section here, just to kind of give it some. Why won't it drag? Okay, why? There must be something going on right now because this has all been working beautifully. Trust me. Okay. No, it should be, so it's selected. I drag it here. It should show a red line. Wonderful demo, because this kind of is key to the demo, and now it's going to be, if I can't get it on the form here, I'll try to put it somewhere else. There, okay. I tried that just a second ago, double-clicking, and it wasn't going there. So, whew, okay, we got it. So I want to save and close. So now we have it at the bottom here, the case age in minutes. and we do public customization, publish customization. So what I'll do now is go back over here to the service module. Then I bring up cases. And while that's publishing, it's actually deciding to show that. What I can then do is bring up a individual case. And if everything worked right, which the way things are going right now, that's highly doubtful. Everything should be fine. We see the case age in minutes is 21,369. When this was created was sometime March 13th, so that's why we see that. Now this value, it added a virtual field, a logical field on the SQL side. So just for those of you who are aware of, kind of the underlying SQL implementation. And it's just a calculation that's happening at the SQL level. So this is all operating at that level of the infrastructure. And when it's displayed here, it's all coming down through the SDK. So this is all live data. It's not. There's no caching involved or anything of the like. The calculation happens exactly when you request the form. So when you make the execution of the SDK, that's when it executes. That's one reason why calculated fields can only refer to data that's in the row. So you're isolated to just the particular row data. Roll-ups allow you to refer to related fields. So that's kind of like how we split the capabilities. And that's why we can do calculations on the current row very quickly. And so we can execute them at request time. And obviously, if you keep adding calculated fields, you have 500 of these, there is going to be an impact. I mean, there is going to be some form of, it's going to take a little longer to retrieve, but on an individual level, it should be fine. You have a question? Yeah. That's an actual question. So what time zone is now in? Time zone is not in the time zone of the server, I don't believe. My understanding is that it's in UTC. I believe it should be the UTC value. So it's in minutes of now in UTC. And that's one of the downsides of the SQL layer here. Yep. Well, there's no rendering. Every user is going to see the same value, right? And there's no time zone calculations happening here. That is something we've talked about for now, and we understand that, yes, it would make the most sense if now actually referred to the now of the user and the time zone that they are. But because it's operating at the SQL level, it just wasn't, for this release, something that we were able to do. That is a great question, though, and is something that we're looking at for the future. Sure, and no argument there. Yes, another question. Oh, that was a great question. So here, let me switch back over to the deck, and I'll get to that in just a second. Actually, something we'll talk about the date improvements that we're making. And I'm actually running a little short on time. I'm supposed to be done right now, and I've just been yammering on so much that I do want to kind of maybe accelerate a little bit so we can give enough time for a special guest that we wanted to bring up here. So let me kind of jump through this. Business process here is about improving workflow, right? And so in the Orion release, the fall of 2013, we started looking at this from, kind of what can we do to make things better? And custom actions, I think, was the big one to kind of pick out here. In the client API, we allowed you to get your own access to the business process flows. So that's kind of something I referred to there. In the spring release, the thing I'll kind of point out is, well, it's kind of funny. The first one there is a good example of a connect item that we received feedback on. So ability to null out a value in a business rule is something that we added. And then being able to execute actions from other processes. So essentially, you create a custom action in the UI. You could create it as a workflow. Being able to actually execute that from another workflow in the UI. What we had done previously was that you could call it from your own custom code. Now we allow you, if you create a custom action, you can call it from another workflow. And so I am perfectly aware that I'm executing or running through this very quickly, mostly because I want to make sure that I leave enough time here at the end. If we have questions, feel free to come on up. So this is about workflow performance improvements. So in the spring release, we were looking at a capability in the service area for SLAs, being able to highly prioritized workflow jobs that you want to run maybe ahead of other jobs because the SLA on them is important, right? You need these to execute in a quick manner in order to be able to essentially follow through on the service process in a timely manner. You don't want them to be behind other jobs that are less important. So that's one improvement we made from the spring release. So if you're on the spring release already, you've already noticed that. The workflow execution improvements in general is something you don't even have to, I mean, you may notice this, but it was kind of hand in hand with the SLA. We noticed that it was taking a little bit longer to run workflows than we liked, so we made some core optimizations to increase the throughput overall. Everybody gets this, essentially. And then backlog monitoring. So now that we're kind of keeping a much closer eye, we wanted to improve the telemetry here. And then this bottom item now for the spring release is how do we keep building on that? And that's making the queue a little bit more agile and have the ability to essentially rebalance the queue based on who's available instead of having them be a little bit more fixed. We used to just say, here, you take this batch and you always have this batch. Now we can essentially have individual async servers pulling more jobs because they're able to handle more just based on where the availability is. So, quick find, I actually don't want to go through this too quickly because it's such an important improvement, particularly for on-prem. This is for, so how many on-premise customers do we have here running on-premises? So all of you, I hope, will love this, right? This is essentially a core improvement to quick find. And I'm going to run through this. This is usually where I do my spiel about all the different ways that you search for data in the product today using quick find. I'm assuming that you're aware of these. There's multi-entity quick find. There's single entity and like an accounts grid. You can, in the search box, type in your search. Today, we do those searches using the SQL-like query, which basically means at the core implementation is that you do a starts with, and that will use an index. But if you don't do that and you want to use a wildcard, which gives you the search capabilities that you are expecting, I would say, we can't use an index, so the performance is poor with large amounts of data. Right? That's, so to say it very quickly, that's essentially what we see today. Poor performance when you're trying to get the query capabilities that you want. So what we did in Vega UR1, and so that should be coming out, I believe, soon. I don't know if we have a date to actually really talk about, but it's coming very soon, is the ability to actually enable full text quick find in online. It's off. It's not going to be, when you upgrade to UR1, it's not going to enable all of this and just happen. You'll have to go to the system settings under quick find. There's been a quick find section for a while. You can turn on full text indexes, and this is only available in on-premises for now, and we're looking at online improvements going forward in a very similar way. But this is incredible for on-premise customers. I cannot stress enough, I cannot recommend it enough. If you are currently seeing either one of two things, poor performance in quick find, or you just don't like how you have to type for searches today, this would be a great improvement. No wildcards are required. You basically get the type of full text contains capabilities that you would come to expect. Usually I would show a demo here, but unfortunately we're running short on time. Now, to the question that the lady asked in the back, we do have some improvements coming in date and time core capabilities. So the scenario here is that if you were to store any date and time value today in the product from last fall, you would always be converting to UTC. We call that a user local date and time value, meaning that, and this is kind of already alluded to by the gentleman over there, and that's for at the SQL level. But at the web form level, if your time zone, let's say, is set to the Eastern time zone, we would convert it using, let's say, the UTC -5. That's what the Eastern time zone is at I think that's the non-daylight savings time. And then it's stored in UTC in 5 a.m. UTC when it's -5. If you then are another user and you view this value in Seattle, let's say, and they're set to this user is set to Pacific time, you see this as the day before, right? Because the time zone conversion went around midnight because it was stored as midnight is what they really wanted, but then they converted to +8, and then that got them back to 9 is what really, internally what this is actually pulling back is 2/28, 1959, 9 p.m. But that's not what they really wanted. Or at least in most cases, is not what they really want, particularly for birthday. And so what we did is for the spring release, this is all for the spring release, we added 2 new behaviors for date and time values. One is that you can set a date only field. So yes, we did implement date only. It's still surfaced in the same way through the SDK. It's still a date time value coming out, but it's always midnight. No matter what you apply to the value, it's always going to be stored as midnight. SQL operations treat it as if it's a day. So if you do less than, greater than, it's always going to be to the day and not to the minute or the hour. And it never changes, right? So there's no time zone conversion. So from a SDK perspective, on submit, on retrieve, you always see the same value, and every user sees the same value. We also added another behavior where it's called time zone independent, and that is where it's a date and time value. So it's the same as the date only, except now it has a time portion where when you do exact same as date only, you store the value, but it includes a time, and that time is what we call it time zone independent. Doesn't ever change, no matter what user looks at the value. Yes?
So now if I upgrade and then I convert my data field to just a date field, is that going to convert everybody who now has like a 5 a.m.?
That's excellent. So the next place I was going to go is actual conversion. No, that's great. So you kind of teed it up for me. So conversion, how do you adopt this? So there's two different concerns. One is out-of-box fields, right? We kind of control those, especially from the customization to that degree. And so the very specific fact is that when you upgrade, we won't force you into the date only for birthday or anniversary, but we will allow you to customize to change it to date only. The concern is that because the values stored in the database have had a time zone conversion applied already, and we don't know what time zone you came from. That's one of the limitations, actually, of our date and time implementations today, is that when it's converted to UTC, everything in the database is stored in UTC. We don't know where it came from, so we don't know how to convert it back to that. Like, we don't know how to roll back a 5 a.m. conversion because we don't know where you were when you actually did the conversion itself. So the short answer is upgrade, you adopt on your schedule, and there's a tool that will actually ship an API that will allow you to iterate through the database. It's got some features. There'll be a whole documentation about it that you can run it. It'll be an asynchronous process that'll go out and convert all your values to the right date value. In a new organization, so when you create a new application in the spring release, birthday, anniversary, all of the kind of the core fields in the out-of-box applications, or I should say a select list of the core fields in the out-of-box application, they'll already be date only. And so you'll have them, there. One other kind of point I'd want to mention here is that you can't go back. So we wanted to allow you to adopt these because they were by the way, this is a very, very common concern that we've heard for many years. So we wanted to make sure it was as easy to adopt as possible. And what that means is that you can go from a user local, which is when you upgrade to the spring release, what you'll see. But you could then go from user local to date only or user local to time zone independent, but you can't go back. We're basically saying once you adopt these new behaviors, the field is locked and you're treating it like that's the type now. That the type is date and time and date only. That's now, it's the same thing as trying to change a type. It's not something that we allow. I'm going to have to move on real quick because I only have 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have enough time here. So I'm going to breeze through this real quick. Another set is, and this is kind of easy. Oh, by the way, on the date, one other item that we did add is the ability to store dates earlier than 1/1/1900. How many of you have run into that in the past, like the core limit? So that's something that we will allow, and we'll go back to its 1/1/1753. That's actually the earliest that SQL allows for the field that we're using, and so we went back as far as we possibly could. I would have liked it to be there's 1/1/0001, which would be the farthest back we could actually go. But right now we're going back to the earliest that the SQL Foundation allows for us. Real quick, the other kind of new feature here is older than clauses. So right now, in the product today, you can do older than X months. And just like we were talking about with the minutes for a case, you can do older than X months, but you can't do older than X minutes, hours, days, weeks, or years. You will be able to in the spring release. And good. It's kind of like one of the smaller things that we actually did, and I usually these are the ones that kind of get the most response. So it's available in advanced find, fetch, everywhere that the operator, the older than X months operator is available. You can do this, and it works exactly the same, I would say in general, as the older than X months operator. Sure, if you're familiar with that. So just to kind of recap, I showed you some improvements in rollups, calculated fields, custom actions, async infrastructure. So I talked about full text quick find, not as slowly as I mean, I could probably spend an entire session on this stuff, and I think we have in the past. So I apologize for taking up so much of the time. Date and time enhancements, we talked about that a bit, and then we talked about older than operators. And so with that, I'm going to actually play a video now to kind of introduce what we're talking about. It's just a very quick minute-long video. And thank you.
Through the years, the men and women of this great department have held your safety as our highest priority. That will never change. It is our promise to you to continue to protect our communities with vigilant dedication and to always serve you through integrity without compromise. We are the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Our mission is and always will be your safety.
Pretty cool video, right? So let's welcome David Jamruska from Orange County Sheriff Department here. So, I just wanted to get someone on stage here. We talked a lot about the platform and all the great things it can do, but, here's someone who's been using this for a very long time, the way, we are talking about today there. He's got some really good, interesting use cases on, XRM and, some really cool applications they have built. So, David, just quick introduction and, talk about what you guys do in, Orange County Sheriff Department and some interesting use cases you have done with XRM.
Okay, so Orange County Sheriff's Department is Orange County, California. We're approximately 4,800 employees. That includes regular full-time staff as well as reservists. We serve a population of about 3.2 million people. I'm an IT manager there. Obviously, I'm not a sworn. And what we've done is actually build out an application to manage our employees, our deputies. We call it PHI's Personal History Index. And what that does is each time an employee is involved in a use of force, has a citizen complaint, a traffic collision, a civil lawsuit, internal affairs investigation, accommodations, we have 7 core categories. Those are entered into a system by the supervisor or by the deputy and tracked. And what happens is it goes through an approval process. Once that's approved, it actually shows up on the employee page. So much like you used to have the customer 360-degree view, remember it was very popular, the rollout, we have a deputy 360. So you actually look at a deputy and see his entire history, everything he's up to. And more importantly, we have thresholds in place. So if a deputy hits a certain threshold, his division commander is notified and he's then prompted to have an interaction with that employee. Let's say he has preventable accidents. He gets into accidents in a certain period of time. There's a notification sent out, use of forces. That's essentially what we do.
Okay, so now in terms of your customizations and such, right? How deeply you customize it? Do you use any out-of-the-box entities at all, or is it all pretty much?
We use two. We use user and divisions. Everything else in our system is a custom entity. Have 197 entities.
Wow.
We started out with 7 modules. We actually have 18 modules right now. We have K9 applications, pursuit logs, inmate grievances. We're in the process of automating large portions of our application, or of our department, in the CRM platform.
Wow. Okay. Okay. And, it's on-premise, I'm guessing.
It is on-premise.
So, just curious, what your thoughts on, when you started building this out, you could have built it all up the stack yourself, right? Why did you bet on XRM?
Well, it's funny that your slide deck actually prompted some thinking. Some of the things was we had these siloed applications. We had, this crazy technology stack. We had Remedy, we had Access, we had .NET, we had a little bit of everything. Something called Revelation. Anybody who knows what PIC is from the 1960s? It was built on that. All right. Woo. So we wanted this integrated view because we had this information, but you couldn't look at a deputy across the board. And frankly, you really want to see that because you want to get out there ahead of that person before they do something that is going to make the news. I'm proud to say we're never in the news, or very rarely in the news, because we have these systems in place.
Okay. Awesome. So, I know we're running out of time. I'm going to, you've been extremely a great, passionate supporter of XRM. We had some deep conversations about it, given us some extremely good feedback on it, on the product and such. So, I might regret it, but I'm going to do this anyway here. So, if there is one thing, right, that you want the platform to do in the next year, right? What's your wish list? And then here's my take on it, right? Whatever you say, I'm going to take it, put it on our backlog, and prioritize this on top, right? Pick this wisely. You get one option to do, what do you want the platform to do over the next year?
Who here says editable grids for custom entities? Oh, come on, more hands, come on. All right, that's better, that's better.
Okay, editable grids it is. So, hopefully by next convergence, I can live up to my promise here, but that's essentially what I'm going to take back from here. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, by the way, Sergeant Korn here is with me from the department. He's one of the guys jumping out of the helicopter in the wetsuit. He's part of the dive team.